So my first theme then is really about the persistence of traditional broadcasting and about how different parts of broadcasting are moving at different speeds. The second big theme I wanted to talk about in the context of television and media as a whole is globalisation, which historically has been regarded as sort of impossible in media because media is so culturally specific, because we know that audiences love content which feels directly relevant to them and their lives. Perhaps it doesn't apply with the glorious exception of Hollywood, which has found a way of entertaining the world. I want to say that I believe that there's been a transformation in the expectations and the appetites and the tolerance of UK audiences for international content, and via the BBC's international commercial arm, BBC Worldwide, I think we can see a transformation in other markets as well. Now, I'm going to mention a couple of examples which may seem very small to you, but in the context of the world of the TV scheduler, they're very big. We've done on BBC Television a version of the Swedish detective series Wallander and the Italian set detective series Zen, which have both been very, very big successes in the United Kingdom. It's more than 20 years since there was last a successful attempt to set a genre detective series in a different European country. British audiences are getting much, much more used to the idea of international casting and international settings, and specifically settings in other parts of Europe. The BBC is unusually, amongst European broadcasters, a very significant net exporter of intellectual property. We sell much more abroad than we buy in from abroad, much, much more, and we're almost unique in doing that. But there's been a transformation in the extent of this, because US audiences and Australian audiences and South African audiences and Indian audiences and Japanese audiences are also having the same experience. And improbably, Strictly Come Dancing in the UK with Bruce Forsyth is Dancing with the Stars in the United States, the most successful entertainment programme at the moment with the biggest audience in the United States. It's quite astonishing that a BBC team should be making an entertainment programme. Special guest star of the most recent series, Bristol Palin, by the way, you'll be pleased to hear. Big hit. And if you go around the world and look at this programme, it's very interesting. It's got very, very strong BBC values and traditional BBC values. It comes out of a long, slightly strange tradition of ballroom dancing on the BBC, brought back to life magically. But in India, it's about traditional Indian dancing. The programme's made in Hindi, about 90% Hindi, 10% English. You'll hear a great burst of Hindi, then the phrase politically correct, and then back to Hindi again. And it's a comic celebration of Indian dancing culture and all of the personalities that go with that. We're shooting at the moment a science fiction programme which is a partner to Doctor Who called Torchwood, and we're shooting it currently in Wales, where it's made, and in Los Angeles. This is a programme being made now, not just for the BBC, but indeed the main investor is an American cable channel. Globalisation in television means that several things. The barriers to entry to the content made in Europe are falling down around the world. It's easiest, of course, for those who are working initially in the English language, but I don't think it's restricted to that. Environments, download to own and streaming environments, the US and international iTunes site on Apple, Netflix, are new markets for getting directly to consumers around the world with our intellectual property. But more broadly, the opportunities for sharing, co-producing outstanding content and for talent from wherever it comes to have a bigger audience are greater now than they've ever been. And this is moving quickly. The world feels very differently now than it did 3 years ago. I believe our commercial arm, because of that, has doubled in size in the last 6 years. I think the potential commercial opportunities for content players in television and in related media to export the very best of what we do are higher than they've ever been. So globalisation, possibly even Europeanisation, is my second thing. And my third theme is just, and the last one I really want to focus principally on is around what I've called new modes of convergence and complementarity. Convergence, the internet and TV coming together, is beginning now, I think, to be a reality. And I believe that what we'll see over the next few years is a kind of battle for the main televisions in people's houses. And what's happening so far is many television sets are being sold, which are very capable of being plugged into they have an Ethernet port, you can plug it into broadband, as well as getting broadcast TV, either digital terrestrial television, cable or satellite. Relatively few consumers around the world are actually plugging the TV sets in. It's rather daunting. There's a lot of complexity involved. The instructions on how you get IPTV are often on sort of page 37 of an instruction book that nobody ever actually reads. And the actual user experience when you get there can be a rather bewildering one. And what we're doing at the BBC with many partners, the other public service broadcasters, ITV Channel 4, 5, some of the big internet service providers, BT and TalkTalk, and the transmission company in the UK, Arqiva, is to set a standard, a simple standard, we call it UView, which is a chipset, a specified functionality, a specified user experience, and indeed a kind of marketing package, to try and bring a very simple television-like experience to IPTV. So in a few years' time, if you get a UView set-top box in the context of digital terrestrial television, the idea is you get it out of the cardboard box, you plug it into the power, you plug it into your TV, you plug it into your aerial, and you also use the Ethernet port to plug in broadband. And you have a television-style handset. You have an EPG, which looks very like a television EPG, but it gives you many more things. It's an EPG, for example, which in the context of BBC services and many other services, will go back in time. So even if you forgot to record something, didn't hear about it and heard about it, on a Monday night you can go back to the previous Wednesday and look at all the programmes that were broadcast then and instantly view them. The archive, the incredible rich archives of the BBC and the other broadcasters will be available. There'll be an app store and many other simple applications people can use to do all sorts of things. A couple of examples, the people we're talking to, Tesco's, are quite interested in whether, alongside their other outlets, it will be useful for some people, particularly those who haven't gone on the web yet, but are interested in some web services, to get groceries, the National Health Service, booking an appointment with your doctor. So we're thinking very hard about how you might bring these things together in the context of the television set. But at the same time, something else is going on, which is that we believe that's one future. There is another future which is about multiple screens and multiple devices. It may be actually that for many people what makes sense is a relatively conventional television experience, but a smartphone, an iPhone, a BlackBerry in their hand at the same time, with which they talk to other people, with which they find out additional information about, imagine, for example, Formula One on the television and the telemetry from the cars, a map of the circuit in a second device. And of course, as many people here will know, an assumption that then if you have to leave the home, there's a simple way of getting the actual video from the big screen to the little screen, take it with you, carry on watching when you're on the bus or train. Social media, both in the context of UView and IPTV installations like that, and in the context of multi-device, multi-screen. We don't think we understand social media significantly enough yet. We believe that what in the BBC we would call the social discovery of content, and then interaction and debate about content, is going to be more and more important. That word of mouth is massively enabled by sites like Facebook. And I was talking to the guys at Facebook in America last week. One of the most interesting bits, unknowable bits yet about the future is precisely how person-to-person and group interaction and the consumption of media is going to take place. Now, user-generated content, the world of YouTube, is going to be an important part of the mix as well. But I just caution people, again, there was a brief moment when people thought that YouTube and amazing home videos of cats asphyxiating themselves was going to take over from, as it were, conventional mass professional journalism or entertainment. That's not going to happen, folks. People enjoy that stuff, and YouTube is going to be part of the mix. But actually the public are enjoying having a richer and richer mix, and they want both and. Both traditional, professionally made journalism, outstanding drama, great comedy and so forth, as well as access to original content made journalistically, artistically, whatever, by people like them. These things come together. So the social space absolutely enriches and deepens our thinking about the future of television, but it doesn't take its place. That's what's interesting. It's a hybrid world. It's not a world which is moving from one state to another. It's a world which is getting more complex and richer. So finally, I just wanted, as a kind of fourth point, and a last point, I've talked long enough, just to talk a little bit about what public service broadcasting looks like in this kind of bewildering world. Many people, many of the proponents of the substitution theory of the internet, even proponents of multi-channel television, assumed that the multiplicity of choice would simply obviate any need for public intervention in the creation of content. Why do you need that? Why can't it be like books? Why can't broadcasting just be going into a bookstore where a perfect market operates, and if people have got wares which the public want, the public will buy them, the model works. If the public doesn't want it, it won't work. I think we can see that one of the interesting dynamics of the fragmentation of media and the multiplication of choice is just how hard it is to concentrate enough money on really high quality content. Global news gathering is collapsing in commercial media around the world. It's very, very hard to justify it. And actually, the investment by the BBC and a few other public service broadcasters in international journalism feels more unusual and more distinctive now than it did 10 years ago. And in the international news gathering space, almost all of the BBC's major competitors now, not all, the American CNN in particular are still there, but so many of our competitors are essentially paid for by sovereign governments, because it's very hard to get the commercial model to work. In the UK, the BBC is really the only significant investor in original comedy now in broadcasting. It's so hard to get comedy to work. We're the only people who put money into British comic talent. And I would just say that in a way which I don't think anyone could have predicted, the model which was invented by John Reith and others in the 1920s for the BBC, and which became a model for many other public service broadcasters around the world ever since, the idea of a population as a whole pooling money together to make content of real quality and of social and cultural value, which everyone is free to use at the point of use, no matter how rich or how poor they are, whether they can afford subscriptions or not, but this content available to everyone, feels like a remarkably good model for how you keep high quality content in a very fragmented world. So, I'd say to you, there's a great deal going on. I'd be quite modest about our ability. We've done more than almost any other broadcaster to try and tackle these issues. And I say, we used to think of strategy as something we did every 10 years, then every 5 years, then every 3 years. We now think almost every 12 months you have to just step back and say, what's happened? Did what we think happen, or has something else happened? So I'd be very modest about my predictions for the future. But I guess the one prediction I would end with is, rather against expectation, the classic argument for public intervention in content and for shared content, which is universally available, feels to me as strong in this emerging digital age as it did in the past. Thank you very much.